9 signs. This may be your last reincarnation. According to Edgar Cayce, have you ever felt like you no longer belong to this world? As if you've already learned all the lessons life has to offer? If so, you might be living your final life before breaking free from the cycle of reincarnation. According to the prophet Edgar Cayce. 1. A sense of disconnection from life. Have you ever felt like a guest in your own life? Everything around you, your job, relationships, daily concerns, feels familiar, yet somehow distant, as if you're watching a movie rather than living in it. You still laugh, cry, and take part in life. But deep down, there's always a subtle sense of detachment. It's as if your soul is standing at a distance, watching everything unfold through a foggy window. This isn't loneliness or depression. It's not that you don't love life, but rather that you sense something deeper is at play. A reality that transcends what your eyes can see and ears can hear. The goals most people chase, money, status, fame, seem to you like temporary pieces of a much larger game. You may respect them, but they no longer make you feel like you truly belong here. Edgar Cayce once said that souls nearing the completion of their reincarnation cycles often experience this state. He called it a cosmic homesickness, a vague yet profound feeling that we come from somewhere else, and that we are preparing to return. This is the first and most telling sign of a soul nearing liberation. When you stop clinging to the material world, you begin to view life as a journey, one in which you've traveled through many lifetimes, learned countless lessons, and are now slowly waking up from the illusion of the earthly dream. 2. Powerful moments of déjà vu. Have you ever walked into a completely unfamiliar place, only to feel as though you've been there before? Or during a simple conversation, suddenly knowing exactly what the other person is about to say, as if you've already lived that moment. This is not just coincidence. These are moments of déjà vu, a mysterious, repeating sensation that science still can't fully explain. Yet it serves as a profound clue for souls nearing the final stages of their reincarnation journey. For most people, déjà vu is just a fleeting moment that is quickly brushed off. But for a few, these experiences occur frequently and vividly, to the point where they have to stop and ask themselves, why do I know this? You might see a strange scene but know every detail of it. You might sense someone else's feelings before they even speak. You might even perform something exceptionally well that you've never learned in this lifetime. According to Edgar Cayce, this is one of the clearest signs that the boundaries between past lives are beginning to blur. Souls that have undergone many cycles of reincarnation begin to perceive the leakage of information from other lifetimes. No longer fully separated by linear time, you begin to touch upon a greater truth, that all lifetimes may be occurring simultaneously, and you are merely a point of awareness among countless expressions of yourself. These déjà vu moments are not hallucinations. They are soul memories, fragments left over from the long journey you've traveled. They don't just awaken curiosity, they also remind you that you have known, been, and lived many lives before stepping into your current existence. 3. A shift in the way you perceive death. Throughout our life journey, we all eventually face death, whether it's the death of a loved one, a friend, or even contemplating our own mortality. But for some, there's something unusual. Death doesn't evoke fear, panic, or anxiety. Instead, it comes with a quiet sense of awareness, a natural acceptance, as if it's merely a doorway opening into another world, an inevitable transition. If you've ever felt this way, it may be a sign that you are in the final phase of the reincarnation cycle, where death is no longer seen as an end, but as a change in state. For souls preparing to complete their cycle of rebirth, death is no longer a sudden and terrifying conclusion. On the contrary, they perceive it as a transition between different states of existence. These souls no longer fear separation from the physical body because they have developed a deep understanding of the nature of life and death. For them, death becomes a release, not something to dread, but something to welcome. In his readings, Edgar Cayce often spoke of this state transition. According to him, souls that have passed through many lifetimes can sometimes recall their past departures. There's no longer fear or anxiety in the face of death, only calm acceptance, as if they've experienced countless deaths before. Death, then, becomes a natural progression, simply another step in spiritual growth. When you feel at peace with death, when you understand that everything in life is temporary, you no longer feel the need to cling to material things or even relationships. Instead, you begin to live with deep gratitude for each moment, not because you fear the end, but because you understand that each moment carries its own unique value. 4. The emergence of strange synchronicities. Have you ever felt like your life is following a special kind of flow? As if certain events or moments, though seemingly random, carry a deeper meaning, like an invisible hand is orchestrating everything behind the scenes? You might be thinking of those unbelievable coincidences, when you think of someone and they call you moments later, or when you're searching for an answer and it suddenly appears just when you need it most. These moments are not mere accidents. They are synchronicities, mysterious alignments of events, which, according to Edgar Cayce, are signs that you may be approaching the end of your reincarnation journey. As a soul nears liberation from the cycle of rebirth, its connection with the universe becomes stronger. The feeling that the universe is speaking to you is not imagination. It's real. And you may begin to notice that everything seems to unfold with a strange sense of order, as if you are engaged in a deeper conversation with reality itself. Cayce believed that souls preparing to exit the cycle of reincarnation begin accessing what he called co-creative consciousness. This means you are no longer simply an observer of life. You have started to participate in the creative process of the universe. Every thought, every emotion, every action you take begins to influence the events around you, often with remarkable timing and precision. These synchronistic moments are not miracles or random luck. They are the result of a new level of awareness, of you beginning to align with the rhythms of the universe. And once you reach a certain depth of understanding about the nature of existence, synchronicities stop being surprising. Instead, they become gentle reminders that you're on the right path, that you are actively participating in the creation of this universe. And when these moments occur, you begin to realize something profound. You are not just a passive part of life. You are an essential part of the universal flow, where every event, every thought, has a ripple effect on everything around you. 5. A special relationship with desire and inner fulfillment. Throughout life, most of us are driven by desires, the longing for success, love, recognition, and to possess more. But for souls nearing the final stages of their reincarnation journey, a subtle yet profound shift begins to occur. Desire no longer serves as the primary motivation in life. Instead, you start to feel something both unfamiliar and entirely natural, a sense of inner wholeness. You may still set goals and strive toward them, but unlike before, you are no longer caught up in expectations or fears when things don't go as planned. Your actions now stem from a place of presence and inner peace, rather than from a void needing to be filled. You live, work, and love, not because you are lacking something, but because you are already complete. Edgar Cayce described this as the natural dissolution of karmic ties, when attachments, desires, and unresolved relationships from past lives begin to fade away. When this happens, you are no longer swept into the cycle of birth, death, rebirth. You no longer need to return in order to learn another lesson, because the lessons have already been deeply absorbed in the quiet stillness of your being. To outsiders, it may appear as if you've lost your drive or no longer have big ambitions. But inside, you know exactly what's happening. This is the deep maturity of the soul. It's not that you don't want anything anymore. It's that you no longer need anything to feel whole. That stillness isn't cold or empty. On the contrary, it carries a gentle joy, a kind of happiness that doesn't depend on circumstances. And most remarkably, from that place of calm, you begin to positively affect those around you. Not because you're trying to, but because your full presence becomes a quiet source of inspiration in itself. 6. Intuition, about the simulated nature of reality. Have you ever looked at the world around you and suddenly felt as though everything was part of a grand performance? An intricately staged dream? For many, this might be a fleeting, curious sensation. But if you're nearing the end of your reincarnation journey, this feeling can become more frequent and unmistakably vivid. You begin to notice that everything, time, space, even your own sense of self, no longer feels as fixed as it once did. What once seemed unquestionably real now appears fragile, almost translucent. You stop viewing the world solely through physical eyes, and instead, a deep inner intuition reveals that we are living within a kind of shell, a projected image stemming from a much greater reality. Edgar Cayce often spoke of how, as a soul approaches liberation, the veil of reality begins to thin. What you once perceived as absolute is now seen as temporary. This isn't because you've lost faith. It's because you're beginning to truly perceive the energetic and impermanent nature of all things. Reality no longer feels like something heavy or burdensome. It becomes more like a school, a place where you learn how to live without attachment, where you can understand without needing to possess. And in seeing the world as a flowing field of light and shifting impressions, you also begin to glimpse your true self, not the individual ego, but the pure consciousness that is awakening. 7. Recognition of the self beyond the ego. As a soul nears the final stage of its reincarnation journey, the ego, the personal sense of I, gradually begins to fade. You still live in this body, still carry a name, an age, and social roles. But deep within, you no longer feel confined by any of those identities. You begin to sense that you are not just the I who is thinking, speaking, walking around, but rather a part of something much greater, a stream of consciousness with no beginning and no end. The sense of separation between me and others, between inside and outside, slowly dissolves. There are moments when you become like a witness, no longer fully identified with your emotions, thoughts, or circumstances. You can see everything arise and pass away, like clouds drifting across the sky. And you realize that you are the sky itself, vast, still, untouched by the passing storms above. Edgar Cayce referred to this state as the superconscious, a realm where the individual dissolves into the whole, where you are simultaneously yourself and everyone else. This is not a denial of self, but an expansion so profound that the ego no longer holds the center. And when you touch that level of awareness, you no longer need to prove anything. You simply are. 8. Compassion beyond all boundaries. One of the most evident signs of a soul nearing the final stage of its reincarnation cycle is profound compassion, no longer limited by species, form, or circumstance. You not only empathize with the pain of humans, but are also moved by the gaze of an injured animal, the silence of a withered tree, or even an inanimate object left behind. This compassion is not a fleeting emotion, but a natural awareness that all life is an expression of the same source. There is no longer any boundary between me and them, between the helper and the helped. You feel the joy and sorrow of others as part of yourself. From this understanding, acts of kindness, sharing, or simply being present with someone in pain become second nature. You don't need a reason to love. You don't see yourself as sacrificing or being kind. You are simply living in alignment with the inherent connection between all beings. Edgar Cayce referred to this as the awareness of oneness, when the soul realizes it has never truly been separate from the whole of life. And when love is no longer conditional, that soul is almost ready to depart from the cycle of birth and death. 9. Natural liberation from repetitive patterns. Another clear sign of a soul nearing the final stage of its reincarnation cycle is the ability to naturally free itself from the behavioral and psychological patterns it once faced. Old habits, negative emotions, or relationships driven by past patterns no longer haunt you. You no longer need to work tirelessly to change yourself, nor do you need to struggle with who you are. Everything seems to naturally dissolve, like sand being washed into the sea by the waves. Old habits such as anxiety, fear, or inner conflict gradually give way to a deep sense of peace. Edgar Cayce explained that when a soul reaches the final stage of the cycle, it has completed its learning from past lessons. At this point, there is no need to continue facing the same challenges as before. Instead, the soul finds freedom and liberation from unnecessary cycles. The psychological patterns no longer have a place, as they have fulfilled their role in the process of spiritual growth. This feeling is not one of giving up or surrendering, but of acceptance and harmony with the very experiences that came before. You no longer feel trapped in the past, nor are you concerned about the future. Everything comes and goes, and you simply embrace it, no longer swept away by the boundaries of time and space. Conclusion: the final awakening journey. When the soul completes the cycle of reincarnation, it is not an end, but a profound awakening to the nature of existence. The soul is no longer driven by desires, fears, or material attachments. It attains eternal freedom, realizing that all things are interconnected, and there is no longer a distinction between self and others. The soul no longer seeks perfection externally, but recognizes that perfection already resides in its own nature. This is a state of complete harmony with oneself and the universe, a liberation from old patterns and karmic consequences. When you experience signs such as a sense of detachment from the material world or moments of déjà vu, these may be signs that you are approaching an awakening. It is not failure, but an awareness that this life is just a part of the eternal journey of the soul, leading you to peace and profound meaning.